You guys ready? We can do this thing if you want to. Or you can just stand up here and dance. Ready?
Yeah, let's get us going.
Hi, everybody. Hey, thanks for coming out. We appreciate you guys coming out. My name is Lync Buchanan. I'm with Intermountain Healthcare. I'm the Director of Enterprise Architecture. This is my good friend, Mr. T.J. Harrison. He's one of the senior enterprise architects on our telehealth team. And we're here to talk about some of the things that we've been doing and have going on. So if any of you guys remember from last year's Lync conference, we were there presenting. That was actually a Series 100. This is a Series 200, so we've graduated up into the next one. So we're getting better and better. And so if you guys have made it to the Series 200, well, fantastic. And we're going to delve right into this one. So today we're going to be talking about a lot of the things that we've got going on in Intermountain Healthcare. How's this thing work? Do I point it at that? There we go. This always looks good on the video and the audio. Is that the right one?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're all about, we're about changing the face of healthcare. Okay? Now, I got to point at that. One of the big areas that we've been focused on over the last few years is neonatal resuscitation. If you see me out and around, I'm all the time talking about saving babies. Okay? And I've got my little badge about saving babies. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. We're going to talk about some of the technologies that we're using. TJ is going to enlighten us on some different areas, and so we're really hoping that you guys will see something that you'll enjoy. But one of the things that we need to talk about is how we got to where we're at today. Now, I'm a firm believer that history repeats itself. Okay? And if you study history and culture, you can see things going on over and over and over and over again. One of the areas that we've seen historically, since people started tracking numbers, is a decrease in the infant mortality rates. We've seen significant drops around the mid-century. Okay? Up until about 1900, about 30% of the infants in some cities died before reaching their first birthday. That's a pretty sad statistic. Okay? That's a lot of babies that are passing away. If that infant rate had continued, okay, if it had continued on that progress without something changing that, it was then estimated that about 500,000 live-born infants during 1997 would have died. But something happened, okay? Something happened, and only 28,054 died in 1997. So we want to look at, and we try to figure out exactly why that happened. Because if we can figure out why that happened, maybe we can see certain trends in technology and in healthcare to see if those things are changing. So let's take a look. Let's go back in time in our magic time machine and figure out why did some of these things happen? Well, the first thing was there were significant changes in the way we live. Okay? Very, very significant changes around the turn of the century in particular. We saw great advances in sanitation and understanding the roles that it played in disease control. People learned to wash their hands. Okay? People brought sewer systems in. We were dealing with the Industrial Revolution. We were getting things out that should be out and keeping things in that should be in. And so that was a major advancement in the living conditions.
I believe Chicago was one of the first cities to ever have a sewer system, as a matter of fact.
Oh, that's awesome. Did you guys know
trivia
that?
for you guys.
Okay. That's a bonus. Why did this thing... My clicker. There we go. There are also great advances in the living conditions and also great advances in the ways that medical treatment progressed. They started building hospitals in rural areas. They started creating what they called dispenser areas, which were basically pharmacies, easy for people to get to it. There were clinics able to treat people. Before, up to this time, if you kind of got sick, you kind of stayed at home. I asked a physician one time, I said, before antimoxicillin come along, what did people do when they had strep throat and stuff? And he says they just hacked their way through it, and some people died. So we see a great advance in the way that we treated those conditions, those medical conditions. Okay. Nope, back up. Click happy. Okay. And then we also seen a great advancement in technologies. Okay. And one of the great advancements we saw was X-rays. Okay? This was really big. Now we could look inside the body and figure out what was going on in there. Another thing that we saw that was a major increase, especially in infant mortality, was the introduction of baby incubators. And that's a picture of an early incubator. Incubators basically, their primary purpose is to keep the temperature of the baby warm, okay? When you have a premature baby, their body isn't able to take care of that and produce enough heat to keep the body going. So one of the ways that babies would actually pass away is that they would not be able to retain their heat, and by not retaining their heat, they would eventually die. This was a big, big problem. And hospitals at this time didn't have facilities to take care of these types of things. Doctors, as a matter of fact, often thought that premature babies, when they were born, they just weren't going to live. Many doctors didn't even do anything about them. The most common treatment, this is a true story, most common treatment for premature babies was they would put them in a shoebox by a stove and hope that they live. That's a pretty radical change from where we're at today from back then. Now, some of these babies actually lived. Some of these babies made it into adulthood. Some premature babies that you may know from history. Probably got some geeks in the room. What are the odds of that? Hey, it's okay, I'm one of you. Who's the greatest scientist that ever lived? Come on, shout it out. Einstein. That's an interesting one. Well, guess what? Albert Einstein was a premature baby. Now, this is probably an Einsteinian side of the room over here. So if you're a true nerd, okay, you may make the argument that Einstein was not the greatest scientist of all time because of the issues with Hubble, right? So then if you don't believe Einstein was the greatest scientist who ever lived, who do you believe is the greatest scientist ever lived? Come on. No. Newton. Guess what? He was a premature baby too. That's a pretty good track record for, and I don't know, maybe Marie Curie was too. I don't know. I'll have to find out. So two of the greatest scientists that ever lived were premature babies. So this is a very interesting thing. And there was also Beth Allen. Now you guys probably go, well, who in the world is Beth Allen? Well, before I can tell you who Beth Allen is, I have to introduce you to a friend of mine, Martin Cunet. Now, Martin Cunet is a very interesting character for me. When I got started in this business, some of you guys have already heard me talk about saving babies. That's what I do, saving babies. I have the best job in the world, saving babies. But I'm not the first guy who used technology to save babies. Martin was one of the early founders of using technology to save babies. In the late 1800s, early 1900s, Martin was studying under a Pierre Boudin in Paris. And Pierre had been working on baby incubators and had been modifying them for treatment. And they found incredible success. They were going to world fairs, large fairs, with these incubators and showing them off, and found an incredible amount of success. And they would actually go and set these incubators up in the fairs and put babies in them and show them off. Well, Martin recognized that this technology could actually save babies, so he began pushing on the hospitals. But the hospitals didn't believe it. It was a new technology. It was radical. It was different. They had plenty of other things. It took everything that they had just to save infants that were born at a regular weight, let alone a premature weight. This was a big problem. So Martin understood that he needed to get this information out into the world in some way, and he needed some revolutionary way to do this. So in 1903, Martin went to Coney Island and set up shop. And he set up the baby incubator exhibit. Now, what makes this even more interesting is he was considered such a quack, they didn't even let him put it in the technology section. It was put on the midway along the freak shows. Okay? So here's Martin with his baby incubator exhibit on Coney Island, set this thing up, and he would parade people through. It started out at about a nickel a person, eventually went up over the years, and he lived in Coney Island and exhibited babies from 1903 to 1941. It was one of the longest running exhibits ever in the history of Coney Island. It was in the Luna Park. Even for a short period of time, there was another park, I think it was called Astroland. He set up an exhibit there and had two of them running. That park burnt down, and as it burnt down, they packed all the babies up and moved them over to Luna Park. It was one of the largest migrations of infants ever in medical history, moving them from one burning park into the other park. Martin set up an actual full facility. He set this facility up. He hired wet nurses. He watched their diets. He had nurses in there. He was very unique in the fact that he had a glass between the babies and you, but you could go through and actually see these premature babies. There was a sign over the top that said, "All the world loves the baby." Okay? And so he charged, and the money that he took in was how he kept this thing going. It was not funded by the state. It was not funded by anywhere else. Eventually, toward the end of the 30s and the 40s, even the hospitals in New York would send their babies there. And they would send them for Martin to take care of. Now, let's go back to Beth Allen. Now, Beth was one of Martin's babies. And that's actually Beth right there. Now, this is really cool because before I could come out here and talk to you guys, Microsoft told me, they said, you've got to have rights to use these pictures from whoever owns these pictures. We contacted Beth Allen. She's still alive today. And Beth is stoked and excited that you guys are here today listening to this story. Beth is one of the babies who lived. In 1941, she was born after 6 months. She was 3 months premature. She was 1 pound, 10 ounces. Okay? That's about 2 cans of pop. Okay? She was born in the hospital. She was actually born a twin. The other twin died. Her mother was terrified of her. She was afraid to pick her up. The hospital knew of Martin's place over on Coney Island and tried to talk her into sending Beth over there, but she wouldn't do it. Martin got in a car and drove to the hospital and convinced Beth's mother for him to take Beth to Coney Island and put her under the exhibit. Okay. And Martin drove her home, drove her over to Coney Island, put her under the exhibit along with her father. Now, Beth is one of the success stories that come out of Coney Island. She tells her story in the way that she grew up, she got married, she had a normal life. Okay? She wasn't an Einstein or a Newton, but she made it. And that's all about saving babies so people can grow up and actually live a normal, healthy life. And Beth is a success story in the annuals of Martin Cooney. Beth tells her story it's extremely interesting the way she tells it. She was so small that her mother, to show how small she was, her mother took her wedding ring off and slid it over the entire arm of Beth. Her wedding ring would fit completely over her hand. And she also tells the story that until the day Martin Cooney died, her parents would take her every Father's Day to visit Martin, and they would go see Martin. Now, here's the other thing that really, really, really gets me about Martin. And I kind of like to think that TJ and I are kind of the same way. Martin died penniless. He didn't have a dime to his name. He is considered one of the revolutionaries in the world of baby incubators. He is considered, you can read the Annuals of Neonatology, and he is listed in there. And there are still doctors that consider him a quack because what he did was he took technology that people said would not make a difference and made a difference using it. Okay? And that's what he did. And because of that, Beth lived. And we're very excited to talk to difference. So what made all these differences? Why did history change in these cases? Well, there were changes in the way we lived, right? People have to change the way they live. There were changes in the way we treat conditions. There were changes in the way that we did things. There were changes in the way of medical treatment. And there were changes in technology, okay? There were all these changes. Now, you can have lots of change, but there's one more thing that you absolutely have to have. You have to have the desire to make changes, okay? That's the difference, the desire. Now, if you don't get anything else out of this today, okay, and I'll probably say this again, because I usually wing these presentations as it is. Every one of you has the ability and the opportunity to make a change in this world, okay? And it's not that hard. You just have to have the desire to do it. Okay? It is up to you. You have the power within you. I'm going to deviate. I'll tell you a little story here. You're okay with that?
Yeah, we got plenty of time.
Excellent. Every year, according to the World Health Organization, there are 6.6, and I've seen the number 6.6, 6.4, million babies under the age of 5 that die every year. That is a huge number. Okay? When I first seen the number and I said, I'm saving babies, I went, oh my goodness, what happens if I save all these babies and what happens to world population? And then everybody dies from starvation from world population. Okay? But then immediately my mind went a different way and said, that's not your job. Your job is not about world population. There is somebody else out there worried about how to feed the world, how to get people to live on other planets and stuff like that. That's not my job. My job is to save babies. So 6.6 million babies under the age of 5 die every year, and the majority of those are from diseases that are preventable. Okay? And I'm not talking about send your money somewhere. That's great. I want you to send your money to different organizations, but I want you to do something. That's a cop-out, okay? If you think you're happy by you sending money and you did your thing, that's a cop-out. You need to do something. Get out there and make a difference in the world. Now, the reason I give you that number, 6.6 million, 600,000 of those babies who die because they don't have one simple thing. Now, most people say water. Oh, the numbers for water are much greater than that. 600,000 babies die every year because they don't have access to soap, a bar of soap. Now, if the difference between life and death is a bar of soap, well, let's get some soap in some people's hands, okay? There are things like this everywhere you go. There is still poverty in America. There are still all these types of things. And if you have the desire to make a change in the world, then go do it. My kids ask me all the time, they say, what should I do in life? I said, what makes you happy? What do you want to do? Make a difference in life. Okay? Do something good. Too many people doing stuff bad. Okay, so let's talk about, now we talked a little bit about history. Let's see what history means to us. What do you get out of this? What do we learn? We've seen what happened in history. What do we see these changes and where do we see healthcare moving forward? Well, the first thing is Intermountain Healthcare has this vision to be a nationally recognized leader in the use of telehealth to improve clinical quality, improve health, and improve affordability. Okay? We're really focused on telehealth. Telehealth is a really big thing that we're focused on. So why do we see a change historically? Why do we see something coming different? Well, right now we're seeing advances in living conditions. Okay? Now, for those of you that are my age in the room, you remember that probably back in the 70s, everybody started jogging. Okay? A lot of people didn't go to the gym and work out all the time and stuff like that. But that's changed radically. Everybody's got a gym membership and all these healthy living and you go to the schools and they want all the kids to eat vegetables and stuff, you know, and so we see these advances and everybody talks about you need to get enough sleep and you need to get enough rest and you need to have a work-life balance. For you guys that started with when I did in IT, you remember what that was like? We had a lot of late nights. How many in this room worked more than 24 hours straight on a project? Yeah. These kids today, you don't hear that. And you say, well, these kids today, they don't care the way we care and everything. No, they're smarter than we are. Okay? They're way smarter than we are. They realize that was killing us. And they look at us and they say, Dad, look at you. You work 24 hours a day. It killed you. Okay? So there's changes in our living conditions, very big changes in living conditions. We also see major advances in the treatment of drugs and vaccines. Genomics is incredible. You know, they can tell your ancestry now by the spit in your mouth. I mean, it's incredible. And we have these teams of informatics everywhere. Now, these data scientists. You know, 20 years ago, we didn't even know what those guys were. We didn't know what they were just the guys who counted numbers. They would have been accountants in most cases. But now they're looking at all this stuff and they're saying, well, if you do this and this and this, you can live healthier. These are major, major changes. We have vaccinations now that can kill diseases in 1 or 2, even 3 pills that used to, as soon as you got it, you were basically dead. Major, major advances in medicine. So we see the changes in the living conditions, major changes in medicine, and we're also seeing major advances in technology and science. Okay? And one of the key areas that we're seeing a major shift in the use of technology is the use of technology in the telehealth program or telemedicine. Okay? And basically what telehealth and telemedicine is the ability to get to you via either video or audio or remotely. In other words, not having to put you face-to-face with a physician or clinician. Now, what that means is whenever we have people who need special treatment in some way or another, but we don't have a specialist available to us, we can hook them up via camera and they can interact with them and they can receive treatment just like they were there. This is a major change in the way healthcare is provided. No longer do you have to go to the brick or mortar buildings to receive this type of treatment. Let me give you guys a little number. According to a recent Gartner study, by 2018, 40% of primary care encounters in the United States will be delivered virtually. Now, when I first read it, I was just like you guys. I'm like, what? I have 2,552 rooms, I think, in our hospital system. We have 22 hospitals, 160 facilities, 38,000 employees, about 1,300 physicians. We have helicopters. We have an insurance wing. We have a home health wing. We have a little bit of everything. I've got a few representatives in the crowd from our company. And so we are an integrated healthcare system that spans the entire state of Utah and a little bit into Idaho. Even with that, the majority of the people in the state of Utah live in a very narrow corridor, and the rest of it is completely rural. I have people that live in many, many places that do not have access to the internet and do not have cellular coverage. You know how they say AT&T or Verizon or Sprint or whatever, we have all the coverage in the world? No, they don't. Okay? I can show you exactly where you cannot get cell coverage. Okay? And so what we're doing is we're trying to get these things into these particular areas to receive this type of information and be able to interact with physicians. But already with that number that I have, 2,552 I think is the right number, beds in the hospital system, we're already about 500 of those rooms being connected through telehealth over a period of only 2 years. That's start to finish. Okay? That is start to finish. Now I'm going to tell you a little story, and then TJ will take over here and he's going to show you another little story. But I want to tell you how impacting this is. So on the 4th of July, 2013, our former CTO called me in his office and he said, listen, he says, Lonnie, he says, I want you to create a telehealth program. Okay, what does that mean? Do I have people? No. Do I have somewhere to go and do this? Do I have anything that you know of that you want me to use? He's like, no, we need to make this thing happen. You have no people, we got a little bit of money, go figure it out. That's a pretty daunting task. Oh, and by the way, he says, and you'll probably have to write a codec. I was like, what? Who writes codecs, man? So we pulled everything together. We started talking with everybody. We started looking around, bringing on developers. And I visited with Microsoft, and they were showing me a demo of Windows 8. And they were showing this to me on it was a Surface 1. And part of that was they were showing Lync. And we pulled it up, and we were able to call each other, and I was like, oh, my goodness, there it is. There's my codec, there's my video, there's my audio. Everything is already packaged together. So I got back on the phone. I walked out of the building, got back on the phone with the business, and I said, I think I found our codec. I think this is what we can do. I think we can use this product because it's already there and it's available. We officially kicked off, we call it TH2O on the 4th of July, 2013. So that's July. So July, August, September, October, November, roughly about 5 months. The first week of November, roughly about 5 months later, we had installed the systems in one of our southern regions. Upon installing the system, we had a baby present in the hospital during this time, first week in November. And she was born with fluid in the lungs. Now this is it's not unheard of, it's kind of common. But the problem that you have with this, there's very few people who know how to treat it correctly. Okay? Now let me tell you what the treatment of this is. When you realize that you have a baby that has fluid on the lungs and you have to get that fluid out, number one, right? Because people don't breathe water. See, that's an advancement in medical knowledge. People don't breathe water? Okay. Good, thank you. So baby presents, baby's got water on the lungs. Okay. The normal procedure is you pick up the phone and you start talking through, you say, count down the number of ribs, you find the belly button, you find the elbow, you move it over, and then you take a needle with a big hole in it and you jab it through the ribs, and you drain that fluid off. And you got 6 minutes to do it. And if you don't get it in 6 minutes, that baby's dead.
That's 6 minutes from when the baby is born. Very quick time.
Now, at 4 minutes, these two doctors got on a video session between each other, used telemedicine, punctured that, and relieved the pressure and relieved the fluid off her lungs. And today, Piper's alive because of the system that we had in place. We began to save babies at that point. And the whole world changed for TJ and myself at that point. The following year, 2014, November again, we were starting to see some success, and we were starting to save babies and make a difference in people's lives. Saving people. We have a lady on our team that constantly tells me, and we save old people. Yes, we save old people. As I get older, we save old people too. Okay. But a year later in November, first week of November, we began implementing our stroke detection program, which was also a telemedicine program. Within 5 days, we had a person present with stroke. Now, the deal with stroke is you've got about 3 or 4 hours to administer medicine. Okay? 3 or 4 hours to administer. You take the medicine breaks up basically the clot, and it allows everybody to keep moving forward. If you administer the medicine and they haven't had a stroke, that's bad news. So you got to make sure that you know what you're doing. So in 5 days, we had a person present with stroke. They diagnosed the stroke, treated the person, and that person's alive today because of that. Now, if my calculations are correct, this November, I'm supposed to do something. I don't know what it is yet. And I have about 5 hours to save somebody's life from the time I implement that. Okay? That's how we're making a difference in the world today. And that's the way we're doing it. And I encourage everyone, you have an opportunity to make a difference in your world too. I don't know where it's at, okay? But if you have the desire to make that change, you can do it, because I'm living proof that if you have that desire, that the world will open up for you and you can do those things that will make a difference in someone else's life. Now I'm going to turn it over to TJ here. TJ's my technical guy, and he's going to give us a little story here about one of the other children in our program.
He showed you a lot of pictures. I'm going to let Tommy and Tommy's mother explain their story for them. So let me fire up that video real quick. It's 4 minutes. It shouldn't be too bad.
So Tommy was born with a cleft palate and a syndrome they call Pierre-Robin sequence, which just meant his jaw was really small. He had a big tongue and he had the cleft palate.
It's not playing.
So he had a really hard time breathing.
Oh, maybe it's got to be on this side.
There it is.
Sorry, guys. I didn't practice that far.
I told you we'd wing it.
So Tommy was born with a cleft palate and a syndrome they call Pierre-Robin sequence, which just meant his jaw was really small. He had a big tongue and he had the cleft palate. So he had a really hard time breathing. So he was on CPAP and oxygen. And then by the time Dr. Morales and a craniofacial team got down here, they were pretty concerned and they wanted him transferred to Primary Children's.
Telehealth was presented to us as an opportunity by the administration, and it was something that we felt was very fortuitous.
The telehealth, I would choose every time over the clinic experience. I was not looking forward to another clinic experience. There was a lot of go in to see one doctor, go back to the waiting room, go in to see another doctor, go back to the waiting room.
Telehealth is using modern technology to have doctor's appointments at different locations so that patients can stay where they are or stay closer to where they're from and get their needs met.
So the telehealth experience was a lot better. We showed up, he played on the iPad for a few minutes, we got called back, we talked to all the doctors sitting in one place. They were able to ask me questions, ask him questions, they got him talking. I mean, everything was just concise. We were in and out in maybe 20 minutes. And they got all their questions answered, and I got all my questions answered, and everyone was better off.
There's a real barrier, and I think this is true for all pediatric subspecialties. We find that many times the barriers are financial, many times it's travel, many times it is just lack of just not having the specialties. So it's not like it is here in the Wasatch.
The patients can receive so much better care doing it this way through telehealth because they are not having to travel. And this is really bringing best services and best care here to a smaller community, and they're able to be in a place where they want to be.
Having a team that really knew Tommy and everything about him, not just one guy that's working on a cleft and one nurse that's working on his G2. I mean, the whole thing, just working together. I would have not expected that type of personal care for him.
This approach with the telehealth clinic is so integrated, and it's a multidisciplinary team. We all see what each other is doing, and we all know the questions that are being asked from the providers as well as from the parents.
Everybody can really be on the same page, which makes it so much better for the patient. They can have a much better experience and feel like this is a cohesive team, and it works really well.
Isn't that cute how he chases after the car, you know, like a typical 4-year-old. One of the things when I see that video that I take away from is the mother describing what's going on for her, right? She would show up at a hospital. In the old way, she would show up at a hospital and meet with a physician. Then she would go to a waiting room and meet with another physician, and go to a waiting room and meet with another physician. And it was a day-long process for her. She doesn't live where her hospital was. She had to come 4 hours to her hospital. She lives in rural Utah. So they have to plan that out. They have to plan the schedules of the physicians. They have to plan the schedule of the nurses. And if one physician can't make that appointment, she's got to come back at another day. Babies born with cleft palates and other craniofacial issues have to see a whole suite of clinicians. They have to see plastic surgeons. They have to see dentists. They have to see behavioral health specialists. They have to see life coaches. They have to see speech therapists. They have to do this their whole life. At least when they're younger, in their formative years, they have to see it more than once a year. As they get older, they can move to once a year. But the point is that it's a condition that they have to go long distances for it. Primary Children's Hospital is our specialty hospital that deals with pediatric issues. It's the only hospital in a 5-state region that can treat a kid born with a cleft palate. So we have kids that fly in from 600 miles. At some points, when they're far away, we'll send a whole team of physicians to them. And that cost adds up. And who ends up paying for that? The patient's family. You know, we realize that it's a burden for all the clinicians, but it's a bigger burden on the family, and we were looking for ways to reduce that. In comes telehealth. As you can see, we just kind of set up a couple of TVs and a Polycom round table. In fact, that was actually the one that they're using in that picture is actually a Microsoft round table way before Polycom actually started selling them. Rare find. One of the tools we leverage is Skype for Business for doing this. You can hear you hear Tommy's mother say that they can just come in and meet with their entire care team within 20 minutes and be done. We take that system to where the patients are. We no longer have to have them come up. We work around their schedule. What's more importantly is the entire care team is there in the same room interacting with that patient. They're all playing off each other. They're all understanding the treatment that others are. Prior to that, they didn't know. It was a doctor and a patient, another doctor and another patient. They may see the other physician's notes, and they may be able to go off of those notes, but they didn't have the collaboration that we have today. What the experience that Tommy's mother has and the treatment that Tommy gets is vastly improved because of Skype for Business and what we've done over the last year. Boy, that is kind of clicky. Telestroke. This is, Lonnie kind of spoke to a little bit. When you have stroke systems that present, you really have a 4-hour window to treat that stroke in order to improve that, in order to have the same outcome. After 6 hours, if you haven't treated that stroke, there's a likelihood that patient's not coming back from that stroke. 15 minutes can make or break the success of that stroke, and being able to get to that patient faster to do a stroke assessment is critical. Stroke physicians like to say time is brain, and in this case it really is. So using Skype for Business, we can get out to those patients faster. We started off in our ER, and as Lonnie said, within a few days we started seeing successes. Now we want to figure out how to get out into the ambulances, right? How we can do it during patient transport. If we can start that stroke assessment, that's that much more time that we can bring to that patient. It's estimated that about 795,000 strokes occur each year. 610,000 of them are first attacks, and more than 134,000 strokes are fatal. Stroke is one of the leading causes of disability in the United States. So it's important for us that we get out there and can treat those patients faster. The more we treat them, the less treatment we have to do after the fact, the less procedures we have, better outcomes for the patient. So we want to get to them as fast as possible. Here's some more numbers. Kind of went ahead of myself. In 2008, $34.3 billion we spent treating strokes. And that number goes up. Here we are, 2015. I can't imagine what that number is now. You know, we talk about the cost of healthcare in the United States and how it's crippling our economy, and it's going to be something that banks, Social Security, and all of that. It's critical that we start finding ways to reduce that, and technology is one of the best ways that we can to reduce the costs. Sure, in the short term, it's going to drive costs up a little bit, but over the long term, as we get more proactive and more preventative in our health, it'll drop those costs down. We can show that what we're doing now is leading to improved outcomes and standardized care. Here's an interesting stat I didn't put up. The lifetime cost per patient is estimated to be over $140,000 for one stroke. Can you imagine what it is if you have more strokes? Oops. Here's some more information. 32,000 brain cells a second are dead in a stroke. So if you imagine if you're not seen in 4 hours, how many brain cells have died? It's a lot. It goes up, right? We need to get to those patients faster and faster in order to save those patients. TPA is a treatment that we do in stroke specialties that it's kind of like an anticoagulant, and it's highly controversial in patients. The longer you wait until the stroke and the older the patient is, the less effective that treatment is. But if you can get it to that patient sooner, they have vastly improved outcomes. So because of the way we have been doing stroke, it's real risky to use TPA. And it's a very effective drug, but we got to get it to you fast enough, and that's where Skype for Business has come in our organization. You see, within 90 minutes, just a huge benefit. Now, we kind of spoke about the patient rooms that we're outfitting. We built an application on top of Lync and Skype for Business that allows us to have far-end camera control. We put a TV and a computer in a room that runs Windows 7. We can control that TV remotely. We can control a camera remotely. We put a pan-tilt zoom camera in the room. We can zoom in, read a barcode on a patient's wrist. We can see how much fluid is inside of a vial or a syringe that we're about to inject into a patient. We can do secondary medications. We can see how much O2 is in the O2 meter on the wall. Very effective camera for what we do. We can see how bloodshot a person's eyes are. Right now, we install this equipment in our ICUs and our ERs. As Lonnie said, 500 beds. By the end of this year, we will increase it into our med-surg beds by another 400 beds. We're licensed for almost 2,800 beds, and we're going to have 900 of them outfitted with our telehealth equipment. From a provider side, we set them up with a nice workstation. Here's a picture of our control app. Very simple, right? Just camera controls, TV controls, volume controls. It's really important that we make it as simple as possible for our physicians to be able to provide this service. One of the issues healthcare is facing is we have a number of nurses that are about ready to retire. That's why you see these commercials for nursing schools pumping them out left and right. It's because it's becoming critical that we get more nurses into the field. What we have, though, what that comes with, especially in critical care and intensive care, is we have a lack of education among these nurses. Nursing is really one of those positions where it's all about on-the-job training. You can go to school, you can read as many books as you want, but until you're actually treating those patients, you don't have the experience. We've recognized that, and one of the primary drivers for our critical care telehealth service was to use it as an education platform. A nurse in a typical ICU ward will only see 4 patients a day, and they'll cycle through those same 4 patients. With telehealth, we can take some of the nurses that are getting ready to retire, that have had multiple knee replacements, that are looking to do nursing, but not in the physical activity that they've done for the last 20 or 30 years, pull them back into our critical care center, and they can now do telehealth where they can interact with the same patients, interact with the new nurses, and provide education for them. We, as I said just a few minutes ago, or a few seconds ago actually, that a typical nurse will only see 4 patients. A telehealth-enabled nurse here can see 10 nurses who are now overseeing four patients, giving her the ability to offer advice for 40 patients and train those 10 nurses throughout the day. We see on average almost 200 patients daily through the system since we've put it in now. Those are our current numbers, about 200 patients a day. We provide them an experience where we can monitor all their vitals remotely. We can check up on them during the rounds and at night, making sure the patients are rolling over when they're sleeping. We can alert the facilities if there's a problem. We've had our telehealth service assisting codes when a patient is having a heart attack or is flatlining. Our critical care nurses and physicians have been able to dial into the room and offer a second set of eyes and help. One of the things we're using the system for is that if we have a patient that shows up in a rural facility, that they need to be monitored. They're kind of borderline patients. They don't really need to be transferred. They just need to be monitored. In a rural facility, they're not going to have the specialist to monitor them. So our current process is that we would transfer them. That could be a $30,000 or $60,000 bill depending on where they're at, whether we had to transport them by ambulance or if we had to fly them through on a helicopter or a plane. Now we can save the patient that cost. We can save ourselves that cost and keep them where they're at and monitor them. And if their situation gets worse, then we transport. But if all they need is monitoring and checkup and have an intensivist that can check up on them, well, they can stay there. They can stay there with their family. Their family doesn't have to pack their bags and go anywhere. You know, like Lonnie said, most of our population in Utah is within a 85-mile stretch of a 400-mile long state, right? And there's a lot of times where you're 2 to 3 hours away from a major hospital. You know, Lonnie kind of talked about the evolution of healthcare, and the next evolution that we're about to see, especially with telehealth, is a remote patient monitoring. Telehealth started really with NASA. NASA was one of the pioneers of telehealth, using telemetry to monitor vitals for astronauts going into space. You know, the space program was very effective at that, monitoring those astronauts as they're going off into the moon, orbiting around, coming back, watching they're the same vitals that we watch for a critical care patient. Today, well, during the 70s and early 80s, telehealth kind of expanded to do audio-video conversations through the Pacific Rim region of all the Pacific Islands. The whole telemetry thing, that kind of just went by the wayside as the NASA program, as we stopped going to the moon. You know, systems got modernized and it just was easier to do it, but now we turned it into an audio-video communication. Well, we're about to start telemetry now. As we need to get more proactive with our patients, we need to figure out how we can do long-term care with them, preventative care, and this is where remote patient monitoring comes in. You know, everybody knows what the Fitbits are, the Microsoft bands, and all these other wearables. Tremendous amount of data there that can help a physician see what your lifestyle is and help you, maybe it's education, maybe there's medication, whatever it is, anything that we can do to help you live a healthier life, right? How we get that data back to a physician, how we report that data in a meaningful way, how we find a way to, maybe you're like a few of you in the audience are always working out. Maybe you're going to have a healthier lifestyle. Maybe your insurance can use it to reduce your costs. Kind of leads into a slippery slope there, but that's what healthcare is becoming, right? It's more proactive, where we see companies starting to shift the burden of their healthcare costs onto their employees. So let's find ways that maybe we can help find ways to reduce costs for those that we can. Enter in the Internet of Things. This is really the next evolutionary phase of healthcare. I'm sure you guys have heard it time and time again here at this conference. Azure, the cloud, all of that kind of stuff. And quite frankly, while it's a lot of hype, it's the truth. It's where things are going. Healthcare is going to be one of the biggest users of this. How we get connected, and in healthcare we have a lot of regulations around how we handle data and patient privacy and things like that. The cloud, Internet of Things, all this remote patient monitoring is really going to matter on how we do that. How can we maintain that patient privacy? How can we maintain that data security? We have to get out into your home. We have to find ways of interacting with those devices. Maybe we build a box, or maybe we leverage a Windows Phone or an iPhone, just to gather that data from your watch or your bands or whatever other devices you have and upload them. The Internet of Things is really going to enable us different ways of interacting with all this data from a healthcare perspective. You have tools like Power BI to where you can do live dashboarding. You have analytics. You have machine learning. So many possibilities are now opened up with these cloud platforms. Stop by the Azure booth. Go to the Windows 10 booth. Look at their Internet of Things devices. It's now that we're starting to do this. We need to find ways to enable clinicians to provide better care for you. It's scary. I'll admit it scares me, right? What do these people know about me when I don't want them to know things, right? How do we as a society get over that? We look at other, as I said, it's kind of like an evolutionary phase of healthcare. Healthcare first started that we just treated you because you were dying. We wanted to make death more comfortable. Then we went into now we know you're sick, let's treat you. How do we treat you? Well, let's make your treatment comfortable. Now we're trying to get to the phase of, well, we don't want to treat you anymore. We want to stop you from getting sick to begin with.
Yes,
So
let me give you a real-life example of IoT, because you guys are hearing a lot of stuff about IoT and the Internet of Things and Internet of Everything that's going around. Here's a real-life healthcare example that we see happening. So suppose, gentleman in the front here, what's your name? Nick. Okay, nice to meet you, Nick. So let's pretend that Nick is driving down the road, and gentleman right here, your name is? Dan. Let's say Crazy Dan runs into Nick, okay? And so Nick is in this horrible accident. Now we have a situation that occurs every single day. People get in wrecks every single day. But with the Internet of Things, it introduces an incredible new technology to us because now everything's connected. So imagine that as soon as that impact hit, your car knows that an impact is hit, and it begins checking itself to see whether it can drive or whether it can't drive. Let's say that car then issues a call to your phone or itself, and it immediately sends a call to 911. The police department is dispatched. As soon as that comes in, all the cameras in the area come on and they start looking at traffic. Policemen are en route. Let's say that you're wearing a band at the same time as checking vitals. Something's not quite right with Nick. He's got an elevated heart rate, but there's also something else there. So immediately his phone dispatches and says, we need an ambulance. So an ambulance is en route now. That phone dispatch to 911 contacts us in the ER and gives us a warning that Nick's coming into the ER. So now everything's starting to play in together. Police department's on its way. Ambulance is on the way. It starts checking the car again to see whether the car will actually move. If it can't move, it dispatches a note to Nick's insurance that says Nick's been in an accident and that the car is disabled at this particular point, and that we also need to dispatch a tow vehicle to come and get the car out of the way. All these things are starting to happen. Now, from a healthcare perspective, we start monitoring Nick, because he's got a wearable device on him, and we're communicating either with him or with the car to understand that something's wrong, and we're prepping and getting ready. The ambulance is en route and is also receiving that same information. And so they know that maybe Nick is bleeding profusely, and so they know that they need to get there, so they're converging all at one spot. Now, that sounds kind of like a futuristic kind of thing, but do you realize everything that I told you, we have available to us right now today? Much of the Internet of Things is just connecting the stuff we've already got together and using it for a better purpose. Okay? That case right there is totally a doable situation right now. And you're going to start seeing things like that. You're going to see some really incredible advancing technologies, especially in the areas of nanotechnologies, and then some of the quantum physics that we've got around, especially around smaller computer sizes and stuff. And so we see using the Internet of Things very, very heavily in the healthcare space. And so we're preparing ourselves for that also.
You know, one of the things I put up here is procrastination portals, right? Companies' business and their branding is very important to them, and I reference social media as here as procrastination because it really is, but it's a great way for a company to know what's going wrong with their company from an outside perspective. Healthcare is important, can leverage that data as well to know how they're providing better customer service. With the recent healthcare changes that were passed since 2008, the quality of the hospital matters. How happy those patients are directly affects how well that hospital gets reimbursed. So why would a hospital care about social media? Well, if the quality that a patient and their family are not receiving from us is so negative that they're telling other people, then that perception is already in somebody's mind when they do come to us. And we either have to find a way to better correct it or stop it from happening in the first place. So gathering that kind of data is important for us. We have so many sensors out there like the Xbox Kinects, you know, all of the bands. I mean, the Microsoft Band is a great one for us. You know, the devices that people are using, we can leverage several technologies out there to see where people are walking in our hospitals. Does a patient come into the ER and they have to go to imaging, and the imaging is 800 yards away and up a flight of stairs? Can we recognize that? Is there a way we can redesign the hospitals in a way to provide better efficiency? This is where Internet of Things comes in. How do we get your location off your cell phone as you're walking through our hospital? If you come into our hospital, do you walk to the information desk or do you go to the cafeteria? What do you do? And how does that relate back to patient care? You know, I think it kind of gets close to where we're wrapping up, and the key takeaways that we want is really, what are we doing here? Telehealth with the use of Skype for Business, it's allowing us to extend our access, and I'll show you that here in a minute. It's about strengthening the teamwork. For example, using critical care and Skype for Business to educate new nurses into the field. Craniofacial, you heard it from Tommy's mother, the experience that he has with Tommy's entire care team there. It's about that teamwork that allows us to provide care, allows us to improve the care that we provide. Right? That's really what we're doing, and we were able to leverage Skype for Business to do that. The benefit is, as an enterprise architect, one of the things that I look for is reuse within our organization. Now, in the healthcare space, there's a lot of niche players that do what Skype for Business does. And yeah, we could have been like any other healthcare provider and gone out and buy them, but they're just used for telemedicine. I can't use them anywhere else. Any clinician that I want to bring on and act as a consultant has to have this platform. But they also have to communicate with other coworkers and their nurses and their managers and stuff like that. So now we're putting multiple systems on their desktop so that they can communicate with each other and communicate with patients. That's why we chose Skype for Business, is that we can use a single tool across our 44,000 employees to not only treat patients, but allow our employees to collaborate better through the use of screen sharing, through the use of IM and presence, and audio and video conversations. You know, it's kind of interesting when you look at employee video that you see everybody's all excited about it for about 3 weeks, and then video will drop off. Since we've been using it for teleservices, we actually see our video increasing, which scares the hell out of our network teams, because how do you prioritize that traffic across the rest of your network? It's interesting subjects that we have to tackle, that we tackle on a daily basis, but we have a great team of engineers and architects within our organization that are helping us tackle these issues for our business, and they respond relatively quickly. By everybody using the same tool, we get that attention. If we had a problem with our instant messaging tool and we had a problem with our video tool, you got two different sets of people looking at them trying to solve different problems. By using the same tool, everybody's got the same problem. So at the end of the day, we're actually getting better service by solving one problem. You want to talk about your thing?
Got it. You want to say that thing? Thank you, sir. So, I think one of the things that we really want to say is what you've seen here today, we're very, very proud of. And this year we were awarded Microsoft's Innovation in Healthcare Award for this program. That's me, if you don't recognize me. I was much younger then. Okay. And the other picture that we see here, this is if any of you saw us speak last year at Lync's conference, I made a comment about saving babies. After making that comment, our team went out and actually built this little board, and it's called Lonnie's Baby Board, and it sits in one of our facilities, and you see it sitting back there in the back. And every time that a baby is actually saved using this program, they put a little onesie on there and the date of that baby was born on there. And that is representative of a little while back of all the babies that had been saved, officially saved, using this particular program. So we're very, very proud of this, and I have a lot of pride in that. And they always ask, where's Lonnie's Baby Board at? So the question then we come down to when we start talking about history, and we kind of wrap everything up and come back together when we start talking about history, is who is this next Einstein or this next Newton? Well, we think maybe it may be Tommy and Piper. They may be the very next Einstein. We don't know. But we're going to give them every means possible to give them the opportunity to be the next Einstein or Newton. And we think they can do it. So with that said, I'm going to turn it back over here. TJ's going to give us a little demo. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Find my here. So we've been part of the Skype developer platform, one of their taps developing the Skype web APIs. And we've built a patient portal that allows us to extend access for patients to come in and visit a physician for a variety of reasons. Now, this is still kind of beta code, so there are going to be some issues, so bear with me. But I just want to show it to you. I'm going to do a live demo against our live environment. Kind of brave of me, but what the hell? We've created a test script, a page that a person can test their audio and video before connecting to a physician so they don't have to go through those issues. Right now, I've been put into a queue, which I'll show you on the back end. Oh, wait, that's over here. And I'm just going to answer the call. And you'll see Skype for Video start up on my back end. Now I've muted all the sound so we don't get massive amounts of feedback, but I'm going to go through and start my video here. And from the patient side, this is what they see. Now I can have a conversation with my physician from wherever I'm at. If I need to bring another physician in, I can leverage a second person. Hold on. Crap, I stopped my video. They can hear you. I know. They're supposed to. Okay. So now we can see 3 video. A patient can have a conversation with 2 physicians right now. This is all through web browsers. I can use IE, I can use Chrome, I can use, from the patient side, I can use Firefox, whatever they want. So let me just close out of that experience. It's handy for physicians, but now I can go back to I'm showing this from my phone right here. I was supposed to launch into Lync. And problems with live demos, right? Let's try that again. Like I say, it's still work in progress. There we go. Using the Lync client on the phone, I can sign in as a guest and join a meeting.
Remember, this is a pretty scary thing. He's actually bouncing off our servers all the way back in Utah and coming across this network that all you guys are on. And yeah.
Oh, you know what? I wonder if...
Lock on.
Well, my video's not starting anyway. It's... Oh, let me try starting the video first. Not on wire. Whatever. Normally, I don't know what it is, but right now, normally the video would start up. This was working 20 minutes right before the presentation, so I was confident I could do a live demo. But anyway, it just kind of shows the power that we have with the Skype for Business client, and the experience for our physicians is the same as any other interaction with any other clinician. And for us, that's an important thing to see, right? Experience matters. To me, one of the things I care about is the end user experience. That's, as an architect, that's the one thing I look for more than anything else, because at the end of the day, we're here to meet the needs of our business and our patients, and that experience that we provide to them should be consistent, it should be branded, it should speak to who we are as an organization, and it should also be intuitive. And that's where the Skype for Business client, like I say, I can't, the Skype for Business client is a great client for that. It's intuitive, it's the same experience whether they're talking to another physician or a patient. So it's been a great product for us for what we've had to deliver for so far.
And I think the big thing is it's the introduction of technology. It's that third leg in the change of history of healthcare that we see. Just kind of on a parting note, I thought it was rather interesting when we talked about Martin Cunet. In 1933, he actually brought his technology here to Chicago in the Chicago World's Fair to show off the baby incubators. And so right here where we're at, somewhere in this area, he had baby incubators. And once again, even here at the World's Fair in Chicago, they didn't let him put it in the technology section. He still had to stay in the freak show section. So sometimes whenever you go and you try to do something, the rest of the world's not going to quite get it. And they're not going to quite understand what you're doing. But if you have that desire and you have that drive to go out and do it, then go do it. Don't let the rest of the world shut you down or tell you what you can and can't do, okay? So go out there and make a difference. We hope to see you next year. Thank you very much for coming out. We'll take questions if there's any questions. Thank you.
So I have a question. You were talking about the technology, the great use of this, but as healthcare, can you talk about the legal, privacy, or compliance issues you've had to deal with, and how did you overcome those?
Sure. Around HIPAA and high-tech acts, there's a lot of encryption. You have to have encrypted communications. You have to have endpoint security. And that was one of the things that the Skype for Business client brings natively, right? It encrypts. All of the content is encrypted. The audio and video is encrypted. The question that makes it more complex is, do you record that video, and how do you store it? In our case, we chose not to, right? If we don't record that and find other ways of providing the same information in the patient record, we simplify our lives. And so we've done that. Is what we do is when we have a telehealth call, the clinicians will note in the patient record, and they'll put tags on the patient record that signify that it was a telehealth call. So we describe the procedures that were happening. We say it was a telehealth visit. We have a special billing code that we can bill to for telehealth calls. And strangely enough, that was the hardest part of what we did, is how do we bill for the services that we provide. And so we had to have a lot of conversations with our insurance, even our own in-house insurance provider. Yeah. The state laws around this are murky. I mean, Texas just passed a law that they're trying to overturn that says that you can't do a telehealth visit with somebody that you haven't seen in person. And one of the largest telehealth providers is based out of Dallas, Texas, that their business is now killed because they can't see their patients unless they've seen them in person. So like I say, I hope I answered your question. By not recording that video, we simplified it, and all we had to do was encrypt the video call, which the client does natively.
And you've got to have a commitment from the company to be able to track this. if you want to be a leader in the space, that means you're going to have to be very proactive. Just in the last 2 weeks, we've seen 2 major changes in state law in Colorado and Idaho. So it is changing very, very quickly. Like TJ was talking about, even the laws in Texas right now are being brought forward in lawsuits. So we have to work very, very close with our compliance and legal department as we move forward. But what we're seeing consistently across the healthcare vertical is that people are continuing to migrate to the telehealth program. And once again, that's repetitive of what we've already seen in history before. We see, like we were talking about earlier, the whole baby thing. Doctors were not necessarily receptive to even the concept of putting that much money into a baby incubator because they weren't used to seeing babies being saved. Doctors today aren't used to seeing the benefits of telemedicine. And so if you're going to do it, you've got to continue to push on it. Yes, sir.
So I was in an incubator, so I always joke about it. Had I been fully cooked, I might even been taller. But the cleft palate, so now you have simultaneously a number of clinicians observing the patient remotely, which is great. But what types of workflow changes and scheduling changes had to be affected? Because the prior was more of a sequential next specialist, next specialist, next specialist, queue in the wait room type of process. How did you really kind of work through, or how did the teams really work through kind of that workflow type change?
The biggest ill we had to do was create a commitment to change. And once we did that, and when we look at the process that they had, it was actually a much harder scheduling process now because they had to schedule their whole days around this. Now they only have to schedule 20, 30-minute periods. They will set aside a day to do craniofacial, whereas before it was a week, right? They would come in, and patients would come in and cycle through. Each individual patient for that clinic day would cycle through, each physician one at a time. Now they just come in together and cycle through their 30-minute periods.
So as a group, they're
Yeah.
kind of working a bunch of them right straight through during that day?
Yeah.
And that's the biggest trouble organizations can make is by not re-examining their workflows and readjusting. This is something that we struggle with our virtual clinics and our medical groups is how do we change the presence of you walking into a clinic to see a physician and sitting there, you pay your bill, then you go sit down and you wait. And then a nurse assistant or a physician's assistant will come and take you in. They'll measure your pulse ox, your blood pressure, your weight, and then they'll go stick you in a clinic room and wait for the physician to come in and see you, right? It's that workflow and that mindset that we have to change in this new world of telemedicine. Now we're basically, I hate to break it down to this, but now we're basically creating a call center of physicians that are sitting there waiting to take calls. And that's going to be a huge mindset because, for one, you can't call them a call center. They're physicians. They went to school. They've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars of training, thousands of hours on residency and fellowships. For us to say, well, now you're just a call center agent, will blow their minds.
Yeah. The other thing is we actually had to enact an organizational change. Okay, so that's one of the things I would suggest if you're looking at going into this program. Don't view it from the standpoint of it just being another clinical element. Our telehealth program is a whole nother organizational structure. And so we interact with the clinical element, but we are completely standalone. What makes that nice is what you're used to in the past is you'll have different verticals. You'll have like your clinical, your home health, maybe your insurance, maybe maybe you have ambulatory split out separately or something like that. What we did was we actually created another vertical, which is our telehealth or our teleservices department, and it bridges all those gaps. And that gives us the ability, one day we may be dealing with our insurance company, and the next day we may be dealing with our home health company. So organizational changes is another one. I think, yes, sir?
There are different means of communication that are happening between patient and the service provider. Now, how are you tracing them for legal and compliance purposes that this guy communicated with this particular person at this time and with this modus operandi?
So the question is, and let me rephrase it and you tell me if this is correct, is basically how are we tracking those legal conversations where we need that type of...
No, but tracing that, okay, I made a call to you and I made it through my cell phone versus a text message and asking questions, etc., or through portal. What's the tracing around that? Because
You want to take the detail?
Yeah.
application on the
So the question is, how do we track the type of conversation? For one, we don't do text. When we do text, that complicates the matters tenfold, right? Because we do have to record that text. So by not recording, we looked at this from many angles starting out and tried to figure out the quickest way we could get adoption, right? If we try to go for the all and nothing approach right from the beginning, we'd be years getting it through. So we stripped away everything that wasn't critical and did an iterative process, right? We start with just the audio video conversations, and that's where we take it. We've been internal for we've been internal for the last year, and like I say, we note that in the patient record for those calls that happen between what rooms. In fact, our compliance and our legal are worried that if we track the rooms, who's calling what room and things like that, that it opens us up and starts opening up some of our operational systems to HIPAA and privacy audits and med mal lawsuit discoveries and things like that. So they've worked with us. They understand the technology to narrow it to just what's required, right? And as long as we're documenting what's happening in the patient record and the method that we're communicating in the patient record, we've been able to get around a lot of those challenges.
And I think that's key is we have our clinical patient record is that single source. Okay, so if anything goes in, anything about a patient, it goes in that EMR and nowhere else.
You know, when we start these portals and things like that, it's going to be interesting. One of the things that we've recognized early on, that telehealth is such a new area that we have to hire specific specialties around privacy, compliance, and legal for these types of communications. You know, it's state regulations alone make it difficult for telemedicine.
How many patients on average are there, say, on a yearly basis or monthly basis that you are interacting with? What's the volume?
Repeat the question.
So the question is how many patients we're interacting on a monthly or a daily. I don't have all the stats because we break it down on service lines, but with one service alone, our critical care service, we're doing 200 patients a day. Our neonatal is tough. In the past, for when we've had neonatal physicians before we started telehealth, the major hospital that we started out probably only needed 12 or 13 consults a year. Now that we put the system in, they're using the system more extensively, and we're still in the process of getting those numbers of how that's changed. We have a data scientist assigned to us to gather this information for us. A lot of these services we've only spun up within the last few months, so getting those numbers and vetting those numbers is still a work in progress. I mean, the neonatal project's been in pilot for a year, but we've now taken it to production system-wide. Stroke, I want to say we've seen 12 or 13 patients through stroke since we went live the 15th of April, I think.
Yeah, maybe about.
No, it was 15th of March that we went live with that service, and that's system-wide. We've been testing it in 3 facilities, and I think we saw a matter of 8 physicians. They weren't our primary care facilities, so typically stroke victims went straight to our Tier 1 trauma center, that hospital. We didn't put it in there right away. We put it in some of the other sub-hospitals to where we want to send those patients instead.
Yeah, and I think to go back to the earlier question about the workflows, when we implement only in pilot, and so we'll have like 1 or 2 hospitals that will test with us during a defined period of time, and so we have had to adjust workflows accordingly, like what TJ was talking about with stroke. We went live, but that was in a limited set. And then as we worked out those workflows, then we extend that throughout the rest of the hospital system.
It comes back about that commitment to change, right? You have to have an organization that's willing to change and communicate that change effectively. When we first started putting in the system, a lot of the staff in the ER were really hesitant. Why are we spending so much money putting this stuff in when we could just hire more staff to solve the problem? It's a valid question, but does more staff actually help the problem, or does it make it worse? You know, if you look at flu cycles within our organization, our urban centers are busy. We can't get enough turnout in the ERs because of flu. Our rural physicians, however, don't have enough. They don't have anyone in the ER for flu. So how do we leverage those rural physicians to help in the urban areas? Okay. It's challenges like that we've had to examine and redo our workflows.
So I think we're out of time for questions. If there's any more questions, we'll be around here right outside for a little while, and we can visit with you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for the support, guys. Thank you.